Hello everybody. Today we're doing a general support warding guide for Smite 10.6, the Season of Souls. I'll make another one of these once, the map changes again. But this is a topic I really like to make, and I used to like to make a lot on my old channel as well. Simply because people aren't warding, I see a lot of new players that just don't ward at all. And that's really sad because a lot of them will die a lot, they'll get sad they die a lot, and then they'll quit the game when a lot of times you can avoid dying by simply putting a ward down and knowing when you're getting ganked. So that's why I like to make this guide. And again, this will be specifically for the support role since this is a support channel, but other roles can use this too because I'll be talking about some other roles and where they can ward. But yeah. So first things first, one thing I want to talk about is at the very beginning of the game, I see a lot of support players and I see a lot of ADC players who like to get like an early ward or a vision shard up on the enemy buffs to like try to see what they're building or to see if they're invading or something. I don't really know. I don't know the purpose of that myself, but I wouldn't recommend it. If you're getting an early ward, just save it. There's no reason to do that. You're going to see what they're building anyway. So just hold up on that. But as a support, within the first 5 minutes of the game, so your early game wards, you're going to spend over in the dual lane over here. You're going to really ward for your ADC and for yourself so that way you don't die to ganks. And the way you want to do that is by placing some deep wards in the jungle. You don't want to ward right here because if you're in the lane like right there, if the jungler's already here and you still don't know they're coming, you're probably going to die. Ideally, what you want to do is you want to put your wards pretty deep in the jungle, right about here, if you can, as close to this wall as possible. Right about here would be min-maxing it. This way, you cover all of this entryway as well as all of this entryway into your lane. You could have gone even further and put one like right around here, but that's just a little bit too deep in my opinion. And then likewise, you want to put another one up here since you are the support and you can afford to go this deep usually. And this way you can also see the radius of the ward as well. I normally play an instant cast, but I switched it to normal so you can see the ward radius. So that's where you want to play within your first few levels as a support. Now, once you start leveling up, if you stay in the dual lane for a little bit longer, usually you're rotating by the 5-minute mark, 6-minute mark. If you stay a little bit longer and you're noticing that your ADC isn't warding and you want to ward for them to make sure they don't die, you can still do this. These are fine. However, if they start warding for themselves and you want to still ward over here, you can look to put wards in these areas right here. What this does is it gives you a good view of this jungle around their green buff area, as well as any entryways into the Gold Fury pit. And then likewise, you can put one down here for yourself as well. These are both pretty good deep wards if you still want to ward for the ADC side of the map, but also if you want to ward for the Gold Fury pit, which is very important. Now, if you're warding for the Gold Fury pit, don't put this ward here. This is just for the enemy team. Ideally, like if you're on the red side, you'd put the ward here. So you'd want to ward more in the jungle over here. So you'd put one here to cover these two ways, but also put one around here to cover this entryway. Now, this isn't if you're on the Gold Fury. This is to see if they're going to the Gold Fury, if that makes sense. So now that we've talked about that, let's go ahead and back real quickly, and we will talk about mid lane wards. Now, once you start rotating, you're typically going to just start in the mid lane, and where you're going to want to ward here is as close to this wall as possible. We're talking right here. The reason is before this rock used to be here, you would put a ward right here, and this would really cover your entryways into the mid lane. However, since they added this rock, you can no longer do that. You can put a ward here, but as you can see, there's still areas on the left and areas on the right, or they can walk through if they're hugging the wall and not get caught by this ward. So this ward is just no longer viable. They can walk right past it. Whereas if you put one right here, you can see it covers all the way from up to here. And it covers the entire wall. So even if they're hugging the wall, they're still get caught. Now, granted, this is not too long of a range for them to get away from. But if your mid laner's paying attention, let's say they're playing right around here, a little bit towards the middle of the map, they see that ping go off, they're going to be here by the time that ping, they're going to be here by the time that ping goes off, giving them a lot of safety to run back into their tower like that. And that's what you want to look for. Mid laners should be warding that themselves, but oftentimes mid laners take a little bit longer to get their own wards just because they're hanging out with the jungle for a lot longer, so they're not too worried about getting ganked since the jungle's already there. Now, another ward you can place is again, in your side of the jungle, is right over here. I like to put mine right here because if you notice, this does cover this way and it covers this way, allowing no entryway to your lane without you noticing. It does, however, leave you open to getting ganked from up here. But if your mid laner is this far up in the lane, they should be warding themselves, to be quite honest with you. But just plain and simple, they shouldn't be this far up in the lane if they're by themselves and they don't have any calls out. So don't worry about it. But as support, when you want to ward for your mid laner, you're going to be just warding here and warding right here. Again, as close to those rocks as possible to make sure that you are cutting off that jungle path completely. Again, just so you can see, right here gives you just enough so they cannot walk through without getting pinged by that ward. You could do it a little bit more if you want to be on the safe side, like right here. But that's not necessary because the reason you want to do here is because you want to get both. You want to get this entryway and this one. And if you were to play aggressively with this one, again, I don't recommend it, but let's say you wanted to ward for the pyro when it spawns, you could put one right around here. This is a little bit too close to the lane for my liking, but it's not that bad. It's quite fine. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the third part about warding for supports, and that's going to be objective warding. This is arguably the most important since, honestly, your laners should be warding for themselves anyway, so you want to be warding objectives. This is also where we'll start talking about sentry wards, which we'll talk about all phases of the game for as well. So let's quickly just head back. Now, for sentry wards, you want to put these on spots that are very clearly warded by your enemy players. So, for instance, if you know the mid laners are warding here, or if you see, for instance, on the map, or just while you're playing, that the enemy, when you're trying to gank somebody, that they're seeing you, and you think they shouldn't see you, just put a sentry ward down because there's more often than not going to be a ward there. Now, don't place it willy-nilly, but try to place it in those spots that I told you about. Like, put the sentry somewhere around here, or even maybe around here, because a lot of ADC players put it so close to the lane and it makes no sense. Please, if you're playing ADC, don't put the ward here. Please take a little bit of risk and put it back here, so that way you can actually see people coming into your lane before you die. But yeah, so just look for spots where you think they have vision on you, where they shouldn't have vision on you, and then that's where you'd want to put your counter sentry wards, or if you're trying to anti-ward them. Now, as for objectives, ideally what you want to do is just put a ward right on the objective, right? You want to see if they're doing it. Now, what I recommend for these is to put them in spots that makes it hard for them to notice, but it still encompasses that entire pit. So for instance, what I like to do on the Gold Fury pit is I like to put it around the edge, kind of, so it's not in a very common spot. So if they happen to fuck up and put their sentry ward right here, it's not going to, if you look, it's not going to cover my ward that would be right here. If you look at that radius right there. I tried pointing at the monitor, but you guys can't see me, so but that's why I like to do that. So that way, just on the off chance they mess up their warding, it gives you the slight advantage to do it. Another thing you could do is putting it as close to the objective as possible, but not close enough to where it just instantly breaks. So like right around here, maybe. So that way, when they start attacking the Gold Fury, it body blocks them from breaking your sentry ward if they counter sentry ward. But as a support, your job primarily with the warding department is to ward objectives and get complete control of objectives. So just making sure that enemies aren't getting objectives for free. And in the early game, you're going to be looking at the Pyro and the Gold Fury more often than not. So, and then for the Pyro, I would just put one right here. Or again, you could put one right here and just have the Pyro body block it. Either or are fine. Just make sure that it encompasses the pit of the Pyromancer, because remember, they can't auto attack it or attack it unless they're in the circle with it. So let's say I put it right here. And that's ideally where you'd want to put your sentries for those objectives. Now, if you don't have sentries because you just use a sentry for something and you don't want to back right now, that's fine. Here are some places I would ward for those pits. Earlier, I talked about the Gold Fury. You know, you would put one right around here and then one right over here. But just to re-clarify, try going even deeper. Try like right here because you realistically you're gonna know if they're coming from the lane or not. So maybe put one right here so you know if they're coming from the jungle, and then put run right over here. But probably a little bit deeper, so like right around here, I would say. Now this one is a little bit more risky because it does give them opportunities to walk around your ward. So just keep that in mind. I tend to notice that players walk more this way than they do from this way. So if you do have to do this one, probably focus a bit more towards this way if you can. But this is a pretty fine ward spot. And then this is just good if you're all the way back there. However, if they're right here and they get caught by your ward, so they'd realistically be right here, they're going to see you on the pit. They're going to be hearing your abilities. So put it a little bit far back, like right around here, I would say. And that's honestly a little bit too close. My bad. Maybe something like here even would be good. And of course, this is a bracer, but this still acts as a ward, so it has the same radius as a ward. But that's where you'd ideally look to ward for the Gold Fury. And if you are on the Chaos side, you would just flip it. Hopefully that makes sense, because, you know, it's two different sides. Let me buy another sentry, and then I will TP back in. I'll just show you the Chaos side, so that way you have a good visual for both sides. So, the specific rocks you want to look for, just to make it easier for you. Again, I like to go pretty deep in the jungle. I like to put mine right around here, because oftentimes they're coming from that way more than they're this way. So just right around here is where I like to go. And you can go even deeper, but just right around here. And then for this rock, it's this rock right here, the one right in front of the green buff. If you notice, there's one on both sides. I like to put mine, if I can, right here. Your left tower is under attack. Just that way, so that way it covers this way. Doesn't quite cover this way, but more often than not, when they're going to come from the mid lane. So keep that in mind. If you think they're going to come from the jungle, then put it a little bit more this way. Or you could split it right down the middle and just hope that they don't hug the wall when they come to the pit, so they don't get caught by the ward. And obviously, as a general tip for all players, when you're in the jungle, hug walls. You know, hugging the wall allows you to get places a little bit faster, but also it makes you a little bit more safe, so you're not covered by any wards. So, like as you can see here, there's very small areas they can walk away from your ward. It's literally they have to be hugging that wall or hugging that wall, and then they don't get caught by the ward. So that's what you want to look for that. Now that we've talked about Gold Fury, let's go ahead and talk about the Fire Giant, because honestly, you don't really need to ward the Pyro other than just popping that sentry there. Oh, I guess I could talk about the beacon. That's a good point since you just spawned. Beacon, you just same thing. Put your mid lane ward here. Put it right here. A lot of people will put wards on the beacon itself, but you really don't need to. Just put one right here. You'll see them if they're on the beacon. Let's walk my way over to the Fire Giant real quickly. Okay, so Fire Giant. Sentry ward for the Fire Giant. This pit is a lot more awkward than it used to be for the old Fire Giant, because remember the old Fire Giant was here, and then you would just put a ward in the middle here. Now you can't do that anymore. And you can't also do the trick where you have the Fire Giant body block the ward for you. So if you're gonna sentry, put the sentry on the side closest to them, the enemy team. So for instance, I'm on the blue team, the order team, so I would put it on the chaos side right around here. Close enough so that way there is a small chance the Fire Giant will body block it, but not a high one. But it also covers, as you can see, entryways, both of these, and it covers a good amount of the pit for you to see if they're attacking it. Now, as for aggressive wards to defend yourself at the Fire Giant pit, you're going to want to put your normal wards right around here. So right between the Harpies and the blue buff, I like to put one right here, right in the middle, as it covers both this hallway and this hallway. And then I will put another one right here. Right from the mid lane, and then we have the red buff and the Fire Giant. So you want to look for this rock specifically. Put it right here in the middle between all of those, as it will cover all of those pathings. So right around here. Because now they can't walk from the lane, and they cannot walk from the jungle because this is all warded. The only entryway they have is right here. But if you're zoning like you should be as a tank, you will be right here to stop them. Now, as a support, you're probably the one that's actually tanking the fire giant. So your solo laner will probably be here to zone for them. But notice with this ward plus this ward, you have a solo laner here zoning, or even deeper in the jungle zoning. There's really no way for them to get in without you noticing, except for right here. Or if they walk down into the fire giant. So real quickly, just to show you how to prevent that, let me get some more wards since we already used a sentry. For the sake of argument, let's say that your solo laner, mid laner, or ADC or jungler have put the wards here for you, or warded above. Where do you want to ward below? You want to put one as close to the lanes as possible, giving you the most reaction time. So you want to put one right around here. Probably closer to here. And then you also want to put one over here. Right in this general vicinity. So kind of mirroring where we had it on the other side. This way, if they walk below, you'll be able to see them. Now you'll notice they can still come from this way. However, the only way to get here is if they walk under our red buff, and they're not going to do that. So if they walk this way, they will get caught by that ward. And if they come from that way, they'll get caught by this ward. And the only areas that this warding method leaves behind is the solo lane for either sides of the fire giant, which is fine because this is so far out of the map that they're not really ever going to be ganking you from there anyway. So now that we've talked about those objective wards, let's talk about the final step about warding, and this is situational wards, or defensive or offensive wards. So we'll bring back the sentries for this one. So if you're playing a defensive state right now where you're losing really badly, you need to make sure that you have wards in front of your phoenixes and in the jungle around the phoenixes. Specifically, if a siege is about to happen, you want to make sure this is warded. So what you typically want to do is put a normal ward in front of your phoenix right around here, and then put a sentry in the jungle right about here. Now, if you do this properly and you make sure you put it right in front of this rock and right between this door, you'll cover this entire area. This whole circle is covered. And the reason you want to do this is that way it prevents against any backdooring, but it also just gives your team a good visual of where their jungle and solo lane are going to be when they try to dive your backline for those defensive fights. Obviously, as support, you can't put down 6 wards or 4 wards, so you have to do this very carefully and pick the phoenixes you think are the most vulnerable. What I will tend to do myself is I will put a sentry on the right or the left of here, and then I will put a ward in mid, and then usually my solo laner will put a ward in the left phoenix and the right phoenix. And then hopefully someone else in your team just gets the other sentry for you. But that's ideally where you'd want to put your sentries and your wards for defending. And obviously that explains why. You know, you want to make sure that you're covering that jungle for yourself and for your teammates to avoid any backdoor threats, but also to just get good eyes in the jungler so you know where they're about to jump in or blink from, or for the enemy solo laner, so that way you can be prepared for that push. Now, the last part about this is the reverse for that. So when you're playing that scenario offensively, because a lot of people don't do this, but when you're pushing, you still want to be warding too. So this is going to take a little bit of time because I have to walk over there. So bear with me, please. But once you're pushing, there's a lot of different places you can ward. A lot of things that people don't think about is, let's say you're pushing this left lane over here, right? What's going to happen to your team if you have no eyes in the jungler and they decide, I'm going to take the long ways around, and they walk all this way and then gank you from behind all the way over there? Because normally people will put wards in this jungle right here. You know, that's why we put that sentry there again, just to cover for these kinds of wards. But they're never warding this path back here. And that's a mistake that a lot of people can make, and reasons why you might die. Make sure you're covering a lot of these entry points into the lane to make sure that your backhind is covered. You can keep looking, you know, you can do the 360s and watch out for it, but just, you know, put a ward there. If you have a free ward, put it down. And then similarly to before, put sentries in front of the door in this rock right in the middle here. Any wards that they have here, this will reveal, and you can break it, allowing you some free vision and denying them vision. And then just same thing, put don't put a ward here, but put a ward behind you in that jungle, and then one right here in this jungle. I did not expect this video to take this long, but hopefully you guys find that enjoyable. I know warding is very important. And I know a lot of people don't know where to ward and they kind of struggle on it because they hear the term please ward, but they're like, all right, and they just throw it willy-nilly. But hopefully these spots will help you and getting better with vision. And honestly, I want you to really take note of this, because once you do this, you'll really start noticing a pattern of you dying less in Smite, because you're just knowing where they are. Vision is so important in MOBAs and should never be taken for granted. So please, please place your wards. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I'll talk to you all later. Peace out. Oh, and this will be afterwards, but I hope all of my Americans out there had a happy 4th of July. All right. Thank you all. Bye-bye.